Hi everyone, and welcome to Anadialogue, the dialogue on analog music reproduction. In this video, we're going to explore a few interesting soundtracks, a few albums on record, tape, etc., reproducing trendy, interesting, out of the 70s sound scores. Let's take a look. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to explore something like this. I don't know if you ever heard about Enoch Light. Well, this is a very special kind of record. It's not a soundtrack, actually. It's somehow a compilation of tracks which was recorded by this guy, Enoch Light, which was a violinist, but was also an engineer who was very, very good at recording music, and especially he got famous with his, for example, the Light Brigade or other groups he had, recording soundtrack movies or songs out of these Hollywood productions, or not only Hollywood, as we will see. So, for example, we have A Clockwork Orange, French Connection, Shaft, The Godfather, and many others. And the interesting thing, even though this is a compilation, and I do not like compilations, I do not suggest to buy them, although these were recorded in a fantastic way. The quality, the sound quality of these tracks is amazing. So I know that someone uses these tracks almost as a test for testing their sound system. So I highly recommend Enoch Light. And for example, also this album is excellent, and the soundtracks from movies which they record during the 70s, 80s, and something like that. Great stuff. Here we come, one of my favorites, Ennio Morricone, who is still alive, still doing music scores. He just won an Oscar with the latest movie of Quentin Tarantino. Obviously, that is not his best, but finally he got this reward, this achievement from the Academy Award, so we're happy for him. But he got famous, his best work, I know a lot of you already know this, but I think it's worth seeing every once in a while, for the so-called spaghetti western. What's spaghetti western? It's the series of movies that were all shooted in Spain, Italy, etc. by Italian cinematographers, Italian directors, especially Sergio Leone, who made famous this guy. Yes, if you, for example, see the end of The Unforgiven, at the end of the movie it says it's dedicated to Sergio. Who's Sergio? Sergio Leone, the director, the Italian director who made famous Clint Eastwood. And apart from Clint Eastwood, the movies they made together, because they made a lot of movies together, almost all of them had Ennio Morricone, who made the sound score, which the music of all these movies are incredible. Search for them, go looking for them. Not only A Fistful of Dollars, Oh, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, etc., etc. They're all fantastic. This is just an example to recommend Ennio Morricone for the spaghetti western trend, let's say. Apart from that, Ennio Morricone also made a lot of soundtracks in Italy, especially for thrillers and horror movies. And that's a trend that took place in the 70s. For example, La Giornata Nera per l'Ariete. This is a famous soundtrack. Well, famous, not that so famous. I mean, only guys who are very interested in soundtracks out of the 70s made by Italian composers, as Ennio Morricone, are interested in this stuff. Like, for example, Quentin Tarantino made a revival of all this, all the soundtracks. For example, Pino Donaggio, but also Nino Rota or other composers like that. So for example, this is a fantastic album by Ennio Morricone, completely different. You can almost call it progressive music, or almost hard rock, also a mix of hard rock and progressive with a touch of noir and a horrific ambience. And I must say that all these albums, if you like that kind of music, that 70s types with riffs, guitar riffs, cool drums and things like that, are incredible, are fantastic. So I highly recommend albums like by Ennio Morricone of this type, or other Italian composers. For example, among all, I would say Pino Donaggio, who made a lot of famous movies, American movies and Italian movies. In this series, one of the best, I think, albums of this genre is certainly this record of this movie, Profondo Rosso. I think it's called Deep Blood, Deep Red, I don't remember in English, but search for Profondo Rosso, you'll certainly find it. This is a fantastic movie of Dario Argento, probably his most famous movies. It's halfway a thriller, a mystery movie, and also kind of a horror. It's a mixed type, which made famous this director in Italy and worldwide, actually. Turning back to the record, to the Profondo Rosso record, the sound score is simply a masterpiece. Here you can see a few autographs of people who dedicated this as a birthday present. It was so important at that time. Here you can see a picture of the director, a few shots of the movies. And who made this? The band is called Goblin, who actually still tours around America and Europe, because they got so famous with this music. The music can be defined mainly kind of what Morricone was doing, but much more progressive music. I think this is a fantastic album, one of the best of this kind. Look for it and you won't absolutely be let down by it. Again, Goblin, Profondo Rosso. Go for it. The next album is more an emblematic album. It's not a real sound score, a precise sound score. It's a compilation of what was called a specific genre, again in Italy, called poliziottesco, which could be translated like police mob genre, which got very famous in Italy during the 70s, which, for example, again, Tarantino goes crazy for these movies. They made so many, a lot of them with Thomas Milian, for example, or other guys who completely disappeared, unfortunately, but still remain famous within the genre. And as you can see, we have this environment of mob of Italy during the 70s, with policemen, with mafia, and things like that, all in the big cities like Milan, Rome, or down in the south. It depends. But it's a very special sector of this production, which I highly recommend you to explore. This is just an example. Cinevox does this because they used to produce a lot of these during the 70s, actually 60s, 70s, etc., and they still do. And I encourage you to explore this genre, as I said, and find some albums, like, for example, Roma Violenta, Milano a Mano Armata. All these are very famous, and I think it's fantastic. Again, we're going towards a rock progressive typology, more or less. That's always the main theme underlying all of these. Something different, which is a little earlier, actually we're in 1969, is something like this. This is a interesting sound score of a terrible movie, I would say, or nothing very interesting, of Camille 2000. But Piero Piccioni was a great composer. Again, a lot of these composers have a classical background, but then they found to work, to produce and earn money from their work doing sound scores, soundtracks. Like, for example, this one here, you can see a photograph of Piero Piccioni. This is recently came out. They found the original master tapes, so they did a new edition of this, and it's a great album. It's much less rock or progressive, but again, you have that taste of the 70s original, not all these replicas that they're doing now, which I think it's very interesting. And this is somehow we could call it a preamble of what's going to come afterwards during the 70s in a more mature phase. So again, try to look for this, you won't be disappointed. It's something similar to, for example, Il Corpo or something like that, these typologies of soundtracks. Something a little more mystic, we could say, is this soundtrack. This is also a special edition of Alejandro Jodorowsky, The Holy Mountain. This is a fantastic double album, very interesting, very experimental. We have different genres of the 70s, not only that hardcore progressive or hard rock or kind of oniric mysterious types of music, but also we could say, as I said, experimental types of music with different kind of sounds. And this is a highly collectible record if you find the original one. And a lot of people have this as a reference, since in that time when it came out, I think the 73, yes, the genre was completely overthrown by this soundtrack, which was something completely new. Also, Don Cherry, a famous jazz musician, collaborated with Alejandro Jodorowsky. So I highly recommend the Holy Mountain soundtrack. Something very special and different among these. I have two last suggestions. Actually, I have it on reel-to-reel tapes, but we don't care. This is an analog channel, so I think these are excellent suggestions. This is a very famous soundtrack. Yes, The Sting. Probably most of you already know this, but as I said, I like to inform young people getting close to this world, to this passion. So I think this is a fantastic album, a fantastic movie where Paul Newman and Robert Redford give the best of the best, I think, in their career practically. And the music, it's not completely original. It's based on Scott Joplin, who was a ragtime composer, music composer, which was readapted and enlarged, and has a 40s kind of a flavor, a retro kind of flavor. We're not anymore, even though this is produced in the 70s, this has a different kind of type of music, which, as I said, goes back in the first part of the last century, around the 1930s, 40s, something like that. Excellent soundtrack, I think. Our last soundtrack, which I highly recommend, also very famous, Shaft, of Isaac Hayes. This is a fantastic album. I use this almost as a test tape or disc if you have the record version, or also a good high quality CD version, because the drums, the bass, the guitars, I mean the piano and everything is truly fantastic. I highly recommend this, and really crank up the volume while you're listening to Shaft if you have the complete soundtrack, because not only the famous theme of Shaft, but all the rest of the album is fantastic, I think. Okay then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and leave your comments. Give me some more suggestions if you want on this typology of music. We're going to do something similar further ahead, more in depth if you like this. So I hope to see you soon, and thank you for following, guys. Bye.